For Waste Not Wednesday, when we try to reduce food waste, I'm going to show you how to make a very simple, light lunch or dinner using leftover or pantry ingredients. It's going to be for roasted tomato panzanella, and we're going to increase its nutritional value with some beans, some tomatoes, some arugula, and for color and a little bit of tartness, pickled red onion. So first, we're going to start with some leftover bread, some crusty bread that's past its prime that I've just sliced here into bite-sized pieces, and we're going to toast it in a dry frying pan. What that means is no oil and just the heat of the pan. So this will take about 5 minutes on each side. You can toss it or use a spatula to turn it, and you just want it to be toasted and golden brown. You can also do this on a sheet pan in the oven at about 350, again for about 5 minutes on each side. While that's toasting there, I'm going to show you the other ingredients that we're using. So here are some grape tomatoes, and I'm sure they'll be really delicious and sweet, but as you can see here, some that are past their prime, getting kind of wrinkled like this. You can see those wrinkles getting raisin-like, and those aren't so good to eat fresh, although they're fine. But they'll taste on a really nice roasted flavor, which again you could do in the oven or just to make things simple so you don't have to get the oven going and to reduce energy waste, is to do it in your pan. So we're going to do everything in the same pan here. And I'm just checking to see if it's toasting yet. Not quite, so we'll give that a few more minutes. The other ingredients we have here are, these are some canned cannellini beans, which are white beans. Certainly you could cook them from fresh, from dry. You can also use leftover beans. These have been simply marinated with a little bit of olive oil, sea salt, freshly ground black pepper, and some garlic. So while we're toasting our bread and later as we're roasting our tomatoes, these will continue to take on flavor as we're sitting there. These are pickled red onions, one of my favorite garnishes, and really kind of a little bit of magic that you can use from using a simple red onion. There's a recipe on the resource guide I made on cooking from pantry meals for red onions, but it's basically a little bit of apple cider vinegar, some sugar, some salt, and water, and thyme. They can be ready in as soon as half an hour to an hour, but they'll continue to darken and get crispier and take on more pickly flavor as you let them sit in the refrigerator. So it's a really great thing to do depending on how many people in your family like to eat pickled onions. They'll last anywhere from a week to perhaps a few weeks in the fridge. But they'll actually keep well refrigerated for much longer than that. So again, I'm starting to smell a nice toasty smell, so I'm checking my bread again. And it's getting lightly toasted. We want it to be a little bit golden brown. Still not quite there yet. So we'll let that go for a little bit longer. The final ingredient that we're using here today is some really nice peppery arugula, but you can use any other baby greens or fresh herbs. I'm out of fresh basil and mint right now, but those would be ideal additions. But the idea is any herb or baby green that you like that will add some freshness and flavor to this otherwise simple pantry meal. So you can see some of these pieces are getting toasty now, and that took about 5 minutes. So I'm going to take that off the stove for a second and put it back into the bowl it came from. So now we're ready for the next part, which is our tomatoes. So I'm putting a little bit of olive oil into the hot pan. And then adding the tomatoes. So you can hear from the sizzle and from the steam in the air that this is a very hot pan. And this will allow these tomatoes to cook very quickly. I'm just going to show you for a second here that they're a little bit seared on the outside. We want them to cook until they start to burst in the pan. So that's going to take a few more minutes. I like to keep them moving when the pan is this hot. Some of them might rupture or explode on their own, but you can also check to see if they're done by pushing on them lightly, and they'll burst. So I like them to be bursted because they add a lot more flavor of the tomato sauce that you're making in the pan to the panzanella. I'm going to add a little pinch of salt. And they're getting nicely roasted right now. I'll show you in a second a close-up. As you can see, I'm crushing them here. And when they're soft enough to do that, we know that they're cooked and done inside. When the pan is this hot, it only takes a few moments. You do want to be careful when you are pushing on them because that liquid inside will be hot. And so you can see this is what they look like once they're done roasting in the pan. So those are going to get added back to the same bowl that we added our toasted bread into, which is here. And now we're ready to add the rest of our ingredients. So first, I'm going to add in our white beans. I'm going to add in our pickled red onion. I'm going to add in a little bit more olive oil to soak into the bread. A little bit of balsamic vinegar. And as you can see, this is all to taste. You can always add more. A little bit of salt. Some freshly ground black pepper. Use the same spatula or wooden spoon to toss it all together. And you'll want this to sit for 5 or 10 minutes so that the bread is both toasted but also absorbs some of the juices from the roasted tomatoes and also of the olive oil and balsamic. And then finally, once it's cooled down a bit, to add your fresh herbs, or in this case, arugula. And just like that, in the span of a few minutes, less than 10 minutes, you have your pantry meal of leftover bread that's been toasted, roasted cherry tomato or grape tomatoes, arugula, pickled red onion, and marinated cannellini beans.